and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Co-Creators Podcast, the only podcast for innovation experts dedicated to the challenges and the opportunities of customer co-creation. I'm your host, Kevin Lonnie. In this month's episode, we're going to look at the science behind customer co-creation. Understanding both the physics and the sociological forces exerted on the crowd allows us to remove those barriers and provides a roadmap to successful customer co-creation. So, to get the ball rolling, okay, pun is intended, let's look at the forces behind this 75-year-old game and how its story parallels that of successful customer co-creation. As a kid growing up in Asbury Park, New Jersey, I spent hours playing this game, Shoot the Moon, at the local YMCA while I waited for my parents to pick me up. The simplicity of the game, it's just a silver ball and a couple of metal rods, belies the complex forces at work here. The use of gravity to accelerate the ball on its path up the incline is the same principle used during lunar excursions to accelerate and decelerate the spacecraft. Just as impressive, the game dates back to the 1940s, and they named it even then Shoot the Moon, 20 years before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin ever set foot on the moon. How cool is that? The crazy fun aspect of this game is you are literally rolling a ball uphill because of the tension achieved by the silver rods. Of course, what does a 75-year-old game have to do with the wisdom of crowds and customer co-creation? Everything. The wisdom of crowds, that term, it's a misnomer. It's inherently appealing but difficult to extract. What we're actually looking for is, quote, the aggregated independent wisdom of crowds effect, end quote. Sociologists term it the WCE. So when folks talk about the wisdom of crowds, they're really referring to the wisdom of crowds effect. So next time you're on a Zoom meeting and someone brings up the wisdom of crowds, score some points by saying, oh, you mean the wisdom of crowds effect. Well, how do we actually extract the WCE? We must think differently. As researchers, and this is especially true under tight budgets that we're all experiencing right now, we shortchange analysis and focus our efforts immediately on synthesis. We're not giving disruptive ideas a chance to even take root. The wisdom of crowds effect is represented by the silver ball. The ball is powered by a constant force, gravity. It is just waiting to be unleashed. So the metal rods, they represent the variable tension. You have control over the timing of that tension. In order to achieve the wisdom of crowds effect, you must release the ball. It can't roll uphill without unleashing the power of gravity. The tension created by the metal rods represents convergence and singular focus. You descend via gravity, and then you ascend via tension. That's why the game is such an apt metaphor for successful customer co-creation. You can't ascend via the tension of synthesis if you shortchange the energy created by divergent, independent thinking. Now, achieving the wisdom of crowds effect is both an art and a science. You need to obtain the energy achieved by independent ideation and then, with perfect timing, squeeze the resulting chaos into clear themes. It requires perfect balance and timing, just like Shoot the Moon. And of course, your initial efforts will probably be a little disappointing. You'll probably get a couple of low scores, then become bolder and let the ball fall too soon. This is what happens in the real world when the wisdom of crowds descends into the madness of crowds. To gain ascension requires skill, perfect timing, and patience. Lots and lots of patience. For me, the parallel between the wisdom of crowds and Shoot the Moon is intriguing. It doesn't surprise me that crowds operate under the same scientific principles as gravity and tension. For our purposes, we need to stoke the chaos of individual creativity because that's where the wisdom comes from. Traditional attempts at co-creation, like brainstorming, are disappointing because they lack that individual ideation. Being social creatures, crowds inevitably turn into herds, and the magic, the wisdom of crowd effect, that just disappears. For those of us who seek to harness the wisdom of crowds, the scientific parallel, that shows us the game plan. It's an opportunity waiting to be realized. fostering the chaos that powers customer co-creation and then knowing just the right moment to pivot towards synthesis, well, that's an art, but it is an exact art inspired by science. Allowing all that wonderful customer chaos to come through brings your innovation team to a better starting point. And it's a starting point based on unmet customer needs and the jobs to be done. It's a better starting point that maximizes your chances for developing something truly disruptive. As I said, customer co-creation is hard, but the benefits exceed the effort. Now, I hope you enjoyed the inaugural edition of the Co-Creators Podcast. I'll be back next month with another episode.